switch gears a little bit and talk about a case study of a process that both of us went through as part of a team at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C.
So yeah, we really are going to have both of us, two of us in three different roles. So yeah. I'll leave you that little paradox or really two of us for three different employers in 4 different roles.
Yes.
Nice little paradox. So okay, so how many of you have been to Ford's Theater? Few of you? All right, yeah. So we're kind of a many-headed beast, in the sense that we have a campus with a street running through it, and that really has 4 different parts to the on-site experience. Go into a museum, theater, then you go to the Peterson House where Lincoln died, and then aftermath exhibitions in a building. You also cross property lines twice during this, because Ford's Theater is jointly run by the Ford's Theater Society, who is my employer, and the National Park Service. So and we're going to talk today about Ford's Theater has undergone a digital strategy process in 2014 and 2015. And it's continued to evolve, so this is kind of a check-in after a couple of years. So really, we started, way back when. We built a website in 2008 that was still up when I got to Ford's in 2013. I was actually originally hired for one specific project, which was a microsite called Remembering Lincoln, to bring together people's reactions to the Lincoln assassination. Also wound up working on getting Ford's on Google Arts and Culture. And really we started to undertake these digital initiatives in part as part of the 150th anniversary of the Lincoln assassination coming up in 2015. But as we were talking about more digital initiatives, we had an outside vendor who we were talking about. Oh, hey, we might be we need to do a new website, maybe do an education-specific website. And they said, do you have a digital strategy? Like, oh, tell us more about this digital strategy of which you speak. So really, it came to realizing, okay, wait, before we do any of these other projects, that we were also in a position where we have a board that is very interested in digital. And as I'm sure many of you can relate to, you either have a board that's not interested at all in digital, or a board that's very much digital all the things. Oh, look what Google's doing. Look what this is doing. You should do that too. So really, we realized that we needed a digital strategy as both a shield and a sword. A sword to say, no, we have decided this is what we are doing. We are going to move forward. And a shield to say, no, what you read about in the Wall Street Journal last week, does that fit our strategy? So we wound up doing an RFP process for firms. I wasn't that involved in that process, but we wound up hiring the firm 3Spot.
So I now work for Blue Cadet, which is a digital firm out of Philadelphia. Previously, I worked for 3Spot in Washington, D.C. So I've had the privilege of working with Ford's Theater during the digital strategy process, and now seeing some of those projects come to fruition. So we're going to focus today on kind of the earlier step, and then talk about where Ford's Theater is now. Essentially, Ford's Theater had the issues that David's talking about, a very dispersed digital team. So one of our first steps in thinking about who would be involved is bringing that team together. And I think the kickoff meeting for the digital strategy process was the first time that all of those people had been in the same room specifically to talk about digital. So in terms of a core team, normally when Blue Cadet or 3Spot talks about a core team that we'd like to have, it's like 4 or 5 people. This was an 18-person digital core team.
We have not gotten it any smaller since.
It is still huge.
Yeah.
However, for that moment in that institution's history, that 18-person team was really important because it included the president and CEO, representatives from visitor services, marketing, communications, IT, everyone. It included the CFO was involved. And having all of those folks available and participate in the entire process was really helpful, because their pieces came in at different points in the process. It ensured that there was buy-in kind of across the board, It ensured that at the end of the process, when we were planning budgets and staffing, the CFO wasn't left wondering about the value of the initiatives that we'd come up with in the first meeting. As an external consultant, we had just 2 of us on staff who worked on the project, and we came from respectively a theater and a museum background. So our role was mostly as a sort of neutral facilitator of this newly formed group, but also to bring ideas that had not necessarily been considered by the internal team or board. So prior to the kickoff, we went through analytics, went through the web and social properties, and came up with some ideas that we could also add into the mix. The idea being, in the initial meetings, we would get everything out on the table and then figure out what to do with it. So in terms of the process, it ended up being about a 4-month timeline. It could have been shorter. It felt like 4 months for this institution and the reviews and stakeholders that needed to be involved, that 4 months was a comfortable timeline.
This was also right as the 150th anniversary of the Lincoln assassination was happening,
Yeah.
so we were also busy with a lot of other things.
Very busy. So the first month was made up of kickoff and goal setting. So this was really the moment where that 18-person team could spill all of the ideas that had been percolating within departments, within board members' heads, within leadership's heads, gripes and grumbles. It was really like group therapy. All of those ideas could come out on the table. And a helpful thing was that Ford's Theater had put together a long-range plan, which had just recently come out before we started this process, that defined 4 large institutional goals. So from the very beginning, we started clumping these ideas, both very small and very large, into these goals. And things that had super high urgency, like redoing the website, were on equal Post-it note footing with ideas like improving the social media presence, hiring a new social media manager, having brown bag lunches on how to use project management tools. So all the ideas were kind of put out there. Month 2, we ran those ideas and their alignments to the goals past 4 key audiences. A board member who is very invested in digital, a super user, so one of their educators who is involved in a lot of initiatives, an institutional funder to find out what would be appealing as a funding prospect, and a field leader, so someone like in this room, so that we could bounce off these ideas and find out from them what they had heard was working or wasn't working in other institutions. The 3rd month was a gathering month. So we took all of these ideas, boiled them down to 12 different groupings. We found a lot of alignment within the ideas, and we felt like some of them could be grouped together in ways that felt very natural. So the prioritization exercise looked like a matrix between sexy projects and unsexy projects, urgent projects and projects that realistically could wait. Not to say that they could wait forever, but they could wait until the end of a 3-year digital strategy. They weren't foundational to the other initiative's success. And then the 4th month was taking all of those priorities based on the urgency and importance and planning them on a calendar. So what it meant is that we didn't lump all the urgent projects first. We also included some of the can wait up front if they were quick wins. Quick wins were really important for this group during the digital strategy to ensure that there was momentum as they moved forward. So the website and the new CRM were 2 mammoth projects that were both in the urgent category, would both take multiple years to pull off. Getting those going would be tough, require commitment, and weren't things that would have immediate gratification. So we peppered in projects early on that maybe could have technically waited, but also would lead to some satisfaction. So in addition to the 12 initiatives that came out of the digital strategy, we laid the groundwork for the ability for the institution to change. We'll go over it at the end, but digital strategy does not mean a sort of permanent plan that you have to stick to for 3 years, even though 3 years isn't even that long. But we knew that even after this was published, as soon as it was published, it would be changing. So defining digital values was really important in this process as an intangible product to say, if new ideas come up, how are we going to vet them? And this gets to that sword and shield that David was talking about. So the commitment of the institution to being sustainable, compelling, people-centric, so prioritizing the needs of staff over technology for technology's sake, as an example. Setting up these pillars for long-term digital values would ensure that even if we created this set of projects, if things needed to change, we'd have some benchmark for evaluating new ideas. The other intangible that we created was just pillars for why we chose the projects that we did in this digital strategy. So kind of wrapping all of these ideas up into why are we doing what we're doing for the next 3 years? We're investing in smart people and producing compelling content. We're earning a reputation for digitization, among other things. So that kind of put a wrapper for funders, for board, for leadership on why this group of projects right now. And those pillars would likely change after this 3-year period would expire. So from there, essentially we ended up with this group of very tangible products and a set of kind of intangible products. The one that's not listed on this slide is that at the end of this strategy process, we actually helped Ford's Theater author the RFP for the website. And we liked to slide in this kind of very super tangible product at the end. Digital strategies have a way of sitting on shelves, even if they're tied to budgets. So having one little piece of something that actually has a time frame attached to it, whether it's a set of wireframes that can start a project off, an RFP that's written, some little piece that kind of gets the actual product going was useful for this project to kind of just get the wheels turning. So in and amongst this digital strategy, we wrapped it up in 4 months. Things continued to evolve.
Yeah, things have evolved quite a bit since, both as far as staffing and as far as the projects. So you see here that we went to the digital strategy being a set of different projects. We hired an associate director for digital strategy, Tatum Walker, who sadly has since left the organization. She got another job. And so, in fact, she was originally supposed to be the person up here, but
change.
Yep. And so we wound up actually reorganizing a little bit after that. We also evolved positions. I had been digital projects manager in the education department. I became associate director for digital resources. But then last year, we found that a lot of our projects were also overlapping with exhibitions. Our exhibitions manager left for a job in Minnesota, and we chose to merge her role with mine. Partially was I missed exhibitions, and so managed to get exhibitions under my purview as well, but also it was because we were doing a lot of interpretive planning for different initiatives that were really not separate. And that was a big part of this as well, was after a while, institutionally, we found ourselves almost using the digital strategy as a checklist of projects, essentially tactics, rather than the overall strategy. And at one point, we had to say, okay, wait, we have this mobile interpretive solution idea, which you can hear about. It's morphing tomorrow at 8:45. Self-promotion there. And a digital signage project and a somewhat defined 10th Street experience project to activate the street. Those were all occurring in the same physical space. And they were going on separate paths, sometimes with even separate teams. Like I was on one of those, I was on 2 of those projects, not on the 3rd. So we actually wound up hiring Blue Cadet, and we merged those 3 projects into what we called visitor experience, where we strategized. We had some underlying circumstances change as well that made it look like maybe going mobile was not the way to go right now. Which you'll hear again all about tomorrow morning. But so we wound up switching that project, that micro strategy project, turned into digital signage and essentially prototyping. So this has really changed the way that we think about digital as well, in the sense of digital not being so separate. that's something that we really had to be careful of. Hence merging my position. Also, when Tatum left, we realized that having a person who is both a grand strategist, grand creative vision, and the brass tacks day-to-day project manager was unsustainable. So we wound up splitting those positions. The art director took on more of an overall creative director role, and we hired a specific project manager for digital projects. He started last week, so can't really say how that's going yet. He seems really great, but so we wound up realigning that a little bit as well. So I mean, this really also one of the things that digital did was it forced a lot of us to work together more as an institution and break down silos.
Yeah, good segue into lessons learned from all of this. I think the biggest takeaway from the process, and even just in reflecting on the process, preparing for this presentation, is that strategy is a living plan. It's still important, though. Despite all the change that David's talking about that's happened since then, it was really important at that moment to put a stake in the ground of what projects were urgent, get all the ideas out there, get the team talking in one space about common things, and not kind of do things in a haphazard way. So planning for that change to happen as part of a digital strategy is also important. So defining those digital values that can be criteria for you to use to evaluate new ideas as they come in. The next thing was, to what David spoke to, digital strategy isn't separate from institutional strategy and shouldn't be. It touches everything. The fact that it was an 18-person team and that those people all had stakes in things relating to technology just shows that. However, sometimes it's important to pick something that you can bite off and chew. And saying, if it comes to saying that something is digital strategy because it has to do with networking and computers, if that means that you can bite it off and chew it, then you might as well start with something. There are a lot of ideas in institutions that can be paralyzing if you look at them all together or as a whole institution, and a digital strategy can at least wrap your arms around some of those things.
And then one of the pieces too is realizing what you're already doing and how it might apply to if you have a digital strategy. For example, one of the big initiatives was to create an online learning community. I realized that a lot of the ways that we were already doing that before the digital strategy. We were building up a group between teachers who would come to, mainly very teacher focused, it would come to some of our summer teacher institutes, doing an oratory fellowship, doing other ways, even just like as simple as our teacher-specific Twitter account. Like, wait, we've already done that. So we've already, we don't need to build something more fancy and complicated to accomplish that. So, that was again, too, a case of easy, low-hanging fruit victories.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we learned. We're a little over time, so if there are questions, please find us afterward, and please do go to David's talk tomorrow morning for more of a continuation of this.
I will say that we have a melted down trophy for the person who suggests the biggest failure on a project.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.